Hi, you guys, and welcome back to another segment of a random ass podcast. I am your host, HB, aka Kazi, aka Bina, aka Honey Blaze It, aka Don't Pay Attention to that noise in the background because it is the washing machine. Yeah. But yeah, y'all, I am so excited to be recording a new segment. I know that I have not posted in a minute, in a couple of weeks to be specific, a few weeks. I think it's been more than 3 weeks, honey. I don't know. But yeah, and I'm actually going to dive in today as to why I have not been posting as much. Um, Honestly, we don't even have to wait till later in the episode. I'm not even going to do the cliffhanger BS. It's honestly just because I've hit a wall, not creatively, but just I would say more so like that hurdle of self-doubt and like questioning like, do I need to be doing this? Is this worth my time? And not because like, oh, I haven't like popped off from this yet. Like it's only been a couple of segments. Like let's be real here, but more so in the facet of, am I even good enough to be doing this? Should I be sharing my opinion? Is what I have to say worthy of being heard? Like just really like I wonder if that is what imposter syndrome is. I always feel like with imposter syndrome, like you have to be like famous or like rich or like somebody like society says is important. So I don't know if it's that or what, but I just been really questioning myself lately as to like just questioning myself, everything I'm doing, in the place that I'm at in life. But I don't think that's anything new for me. I also don't think that's anything. You all, sorry about that. We had a little technical difficulty. One of my mics died. I should probably put her on the charger. BRB. Okay, we are back. Sorry about that. But yeah, I don't know where the it left off before it cut out. But basically, I was just saying, like, lately just been dealing with imposter syndrome. I always deemed that something that people who are rich and famous and like viewed as higher up in society, I guess, dealt with because who am I to be impostering? Like, who do I think I am to deal with imposter syndrome? But when I really think about it, I don't think anyone is exempt from that. I think everyone questions their place in the world and what they're doing in their craft and if they're good enough to be doing it, if they're worthy enough to be doing it, and if they're going to be valued by doing it. I think it's just human nature to want to be accepted and want to have the things that you create in a sense be liked and just things of that nature. But I really had to ground myself, especially after the situation we're going to talk about. I really had to ground myself and realize like this is merely for me. And just the backstory because I don't really think I ever gave like the backstory of where Random Ass Podcast came from and how it came about. To be honest, this didn't start off as a podcast. This has been something I've been doing for years. Um, I always record audio diaries. Like I am a sonic person. I like to be verbal and I like to hear things. Visuals are great, reading is great, writing is great, but for me, speaking, like ever since I was younger, my nickname has been Talking Tina in my family, and clearly you can see why. But I love to just talk my feelings out. I record conversations between me, my friends, my partners, nothing with malicious intent, but just merely to reflect and look back and see how I responded and just as a like guide of reflection, the same way people do their journals, the same way people do uh like scrapbooks and video diaries. I just do audio diaries. And so I have hundreds of hours of recordings on all the phones that I've had for the past like 5 years of just things that I've been going through, my trials and tribulations, my young 20 somethings. I think it's so beautiful to have that time capsule of my young 20 somethings and just be able to look back on it. And that's really how this started. I would talk about celebrity stuff. I would talk about my own things. I would just give my opinion, the politically incorrect ones that I just felt like other people probably wouldn't understand. And yeah, so a random ass podcast came about because this is really just my audio diaries that I put online. These are the conversations that me and my friend have. These are the opinions that I have, raw and uncut. I rarely edit these takes. I want them to be real. I want them to be in the moment. I want it to be like a FaceTime call, like a phone call. Like, bitch, you a fly on the wall over here. Like everything is just what it is. So yeah, that's how this came about. And yeah, so just putting it out there on the internet is a little nerve wracking because this is something that's personal to me. So yeah, yeah. That's just a little snapshot of what's been going on with me lately. But I'm actually very excited about this episode today because this segment is going to be called Parental Guidance. And I don't know what's in the season with these parents, honey, but they've been on one and maybe on two. I don't know what's been going on, but actually, something new is occurring today. We have an anonymous caller coming in who also needs some parental guidance, which I thought was so ironic because when the anonymous caller like tapped in and was like, "Hey, I want your opinion on this. I want your," first of all, hold on. Let me start by saying I am so honored that anybody values the things that come out of my mouth. Oh my God. Like, y'all don't understand. As a person who like to run their mouth, when someone says your opinion is like important to me, that little bit of validation, that little bit of reassurance, I'm like, oh my God, I'm never gonna shut up now. But no, it's really flattering. And I hope that whatever I say today um, is helpful in any sense. I don't expect people to take all of my advice. I don't expect people to run with what I say and, whatever. Um, I'm just a human, just like you. And I have my own beliefs based on my own experiences. When it comes to having these beliefs based on my experience, I always try to put myself in other people's shoes and understand that just because we may have similar experiences, our outlooks are not going to be the same, and our future is not going to be the same, and our walks of life are not the same. So, how you may view my opinion is completely up to you to digest and filter out what applies and what doesn't. You know what I'm saying? So, either way, I'm honored that anyone cares to have my opinion or hear what the fuck I have to say. But yeah, I'm super excited. But I just thought it was very interesting, like the situation that they were in, because I am in a very similar situation and have been in a prior similar situation with my biological father um, growing up. So before we get into that, I really want to get into my own parental guidance like situation and just talk about like my mama got me fucked up. Period. Let's just get into it. Let's just get into it because now we got the professional shit out of the way. We really finna get into it, y'all. Excuse my French and excuse my lingua, but we finna tap into the bullshit. You feel me? So I'm going back no contact with my mom. And let me let y'all know why I'm going back, meaning again. Meaning this is not the first time I had to cut this lady off. And this time I do not feel bad about not speaking with my mother. So let me begin with the fact that I love my mother. I love my mother. I am not, and trust me, I am 25 years old and heavily on social media in the frame of like TikTok. TikTok is my preferred social media at this point. So, with that being said, I see all the Discord and I see all the videos of young millennial and Gen Zers and some even Gen Xers talking about they're cutting their parents off. It's like an epidemic upon epidemic. It's like somebody just hit a light switch and said, fuck them. You know, somebody just said to hell with our parents and our family. A lot of these stories, I completely understand. I completely understand. Some of them, again, to each his own. I didn't have to deal with them. You did. So if you want to cut Lilith off, if you want to cut Shireen off, if you want to cut Barbara off, hey, do you, baby. But I think a lot of the stories that I hear, I don't hear a lot of empathy on the child side geared towards the parents. I think it's so crazy because I feel like life is just full of contradictions. And life is the biggest double edged sword ever. While on one end of the sword, we're like the generation of mental health and emotional health and spiritual wellness and all of these other things, and listening and gentle parenting and understanding all these other things, at the opposite end of that sword, we kind of put our parents on these realistic, unrealistic pedestals and expectations of who they should have been to us, although they were literally just trying their best. And I won't say every parent tried their best. Some parents are just people too. You know what I'm saying? Some people go into work and they give it 110%, and sometimes they just don't get the gist of what's happening. They make mistakes, they fuck up, and maybe they fuck up a little more than others. Some people go to work, they don't try at all, they're just merely getting by. Some people go to work and they excel at work. You know what I'm saying? Their boss never has any quorums with them. Some people don't go to work at all. Some people choose to be fucking jobless. You know what I'm saying? And that's just my analogy with parenthood. Some parents come up and they really try their best. And they really try to understand their children and do the best that they can for their children and be the best person that they can for their children. And they fuck up because they are human too, merely human. And some of those fuck ups cause traumas and are a little bit detrimental. You know what I'm saying? Some parents show up and they're just great parents. I don't believe there's a perfect parent because there's no perfect person. But there are some parents that just get it right and their child doesn't have any childhood traumas from their parents specifically. We all have childhood traumas, but some of ours just directly descend from our parents and our family. Some people don't have that. Maybe their trauma was school based and they got bullied like a motherfucker in school. Or maybe they just fucking, I don't know, but their parents didn't give them that sort of trauma that a lot of us have from our parents. Some parents just don't show up at all. Some parents are deadbeats. Some parents choose the streets. They choose drugs. They choose other people. They choose other things outside of their children. And that's why I make the analogy of people at work. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody is different. You know, um, I think for me, my mom, she was a materialistic. Well, first of all, let me say this before I dive into that, let me not jump too much around. I know I do that a lot. Child, I got ADD, honey. This brain be everywhere, child. I'm trying to make a point, and anywho. But yeah, I feel like this day and age, like a lot of people hold their parents on these unrealistic pedestals. It's like you did this to me, and you caused trauma, and some of it is absolutely inexcusable, absolutely inexcusable. But I think a lot of it is simply a lot of our parents didn't really have healthy upbringings. Like, let's be fucking for real. A lot of our parents grew up in the crack pandemic. Shit, some of our parents grew up in Jim Crow, depending on how old your parent is. Like, their parents grew up in Jim Crow. And then their parents grew up. And this is coming from a black woman. I'm a black woman in the South. My whole family is from the South. My mama and my daddy's side are all from the South. We are descendants of slaves, honey. We fresh off the boat around this motherfucker, okay? So to be real with you, I know that there's a different level of generational curses that, my lineage has. And I'm sure it's different for other ethnicities and other races and other nationalities. But I can only speak from me, and I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of times these segments, these podcasts, these conversations are for niggas. Period. I'm going to tell you right now, they for niggas. I'm a nigga. I'm going to speak from a nigga perspective. Like I said, I always try to put myself in other people's shoes, but there are some things based on experience that I will never be able to relate to and other people will never be able to relate to. The only thing you can do is empathize and or sympathize and try to understand me as best that you can. So that is just the voice that I'm holding right now is of a black Southern American woman, you know? Um, so with that being said, I understand that there are a lot of generational curses that my lineage has to unpack and a lot of karmic cycles that we're gonna have to go through. And me and my friend, we say this a lot. Your children oftentimes pay for the sins of their parents, you know? So just think of that when you see your mom, you see your dad, and you see the type of person they are. They are paying for the sins of their parents and their parents' parents, and so on and so forth. You could chop that up to a spiritual aspect. You could chop it up to a psychological aspect. You could chop it up to whatever you want to chop it up to. But I guarantee you, your mother is raising you based on the mother she was raised by or the father she was raised by or lack thereof. You look at your mom, you look at how she act, and if you have the opportunity to compare her to your grandparents, if you ever got to interact and meet or be around your grandparents for a certain amount of time, I guarantee you're going to see a reflection of your grandmother, your grandfather, and your mother. And that's what it was with my mom. I love her and I give her so much empathy because for a long time I couldn't see my mother as a human being. I honestly could not see her as such. But I remember getting a picture of my mom when she was about 13 years old and then another picture when she was in kindergarten. And growing up, sometimes my mom would be open enough to sharing some of her stories from her upbringing. And when she would tell those stories, oftentimes she was around those ages that she was in those pictures of when the most traumatizing things occurred to her. And so whenever I see my mom after I got those pictures, I only seen her as those children. I only seen her in her childlike state because that is what she is at the end of the day. She is nothing more than a child. Now, these are discoveries that I went through prior to this being like a uprising on the internet and social media, prior to this being a conversation being had. So a lot of this self-discovery and a lot of this acknowledgement, I didn't have the terminology to back it, but I had the knowing of, damn, you really a kid, bro. Like, I wouldn't say it in a manner of your inner child is wounded, and that's, I didn't have the psychological understanding of it, but I knew my mother acted like a child, and I will oftentimes say to myself, I didn't say it to her, that's why I still got my front teeth, but I will oftentimes say to myself, we the same age, bro. Like, you act like me, you act like you're an adolescent teenage girl like me, and if we was in school we would not be friends, be like, we would not. And little did I know, the reason I thought that is because I could recognize she was just a wounded child. And oftentimes I feel like, especially with mothers of colors and black mothers, a lot of that aggression, a lot of that conflict that comes between us oftentimes is because they are envious of us and jealous of us. And I don't mean she jealous of me because I'm pretty. She jealous of me because my hair. She jealous of me because whatever, whatever. Like the fucking surface level shit. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when our parents see us, when our mothers see us, they see all the opportunities that they did not have growing up. They see the freedom as a black woman to express yourself and be vulnerable. They see the freedom to come out here and be whoever you want to be and own as many businesses as you want to own. The opportunity to escape and have a safe haven. The opportunity to build better relationships, the education, the knowledge, the all of this stuff that they did not have growing up, all the resources that we have. I feel like that may be a trigger point for a lot of them, and I feel like that may cause a lot of envy or jealousy. I also think about the fact that a lot of our parents had to grow up at a very, very early age. And I'm going to speak more so in the guidelines of my mother because this is what I know based on my experience. Um, my mother had to grow up very, very, very fast. And she grew up with a mother who was jealous of her as well because of how her mother grew up. You know, a lot of times our parents, they say, I work hard so you can have better than I have, and you don't have to go without like I had to go without in all of these things. And I think that is very true. But I also think a lot of that energy is for their younger selves, and their kids just so happen to be in the circumference of receiving that. I don't think that, let me find a way to really break that down to where I feel as though it'll be understood better. I think our parents look at us and obviously they see themselves. Obviously. I'm not a parent. I don't have children. So this is only what I can only assume. They think about the childhood that they had, and a lot of that was instilled to them by their parents is the materialism of parenthood. Money was the pinnacle of parenthood, especially because a lot of our parents was born in the crack era. So, like for my mother, her biological father was addicted to drugs. That is how he passed. He OD'd on drugs. And also, I just want to make it be known, everything that I'm saying is in her book. This is not any information that I'm putting out there that isn't something that she is not willing to talk about. I am also going to be respectful of the people that I speak on because they are still people, but at the same time, this is my truth. So I'm going to speak on my truth, but I'm going to still Be respectful for the people I'm talking about. Okay? Even though I have this ongoing joke that I'm going to profit off of my trauma because character development is just not enough for me. It don't pay the bills. I'm still gonna be respectful, and I'm not gonna profit off my trauma, and I'm not gonna, whatever. It's an inside joke between me and my people, but I'm still gonna be respectful. So I just want to let that be known because I am gonna talk about a lot of sensitive things. Trigger warning. But yeah, my mother's biological father OD'd on drugs. Now this is more recently. This is like 4 or 5 years ago, but growing up, he struggled with that. Growing up, her mother had 4 children, including my mom. So you can obviously imagine how hard that was for her and how much they went without. So now my mother has a child, and her goal is to provide all the materialistic things that she had to go without. And that is how money becomes the pinnacle of parenthood. Because money doesn't ensure of nurturing. Money doesn't ensure of guidance. Money doesn't ensure of spiritual, mental, emotional well-being. Money doesn't ensure of protection in the ways that you may think it does. Money doesn't ensure of clear communication. Money doesn't ensure of character development. Money doesn't do any of that. That is what a present parent does. But she wasn't a present parent because she was just trying to fill in the voids of which she had from her childhood. But none of them voids consisted of actual parenting because she didn't learn that as a child. I also take a step back, and I am going to get to the point of why I had to cut my mother off, but I really want to give an in-depth backstory of who she is, and how it's affected where we are now, and why I have to take a step back. My mother was in ballet. She was a pageant queen. She did a bunch of different dancing. She was very beautiful. Like when I look at my mother is one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen in my life. I think she's gorgeous. But her mother was envious of her on a whole nother level. My mother didn't get the protection that she needed from her stepfather. Her biological father wasn't really in the picture, and when he was, he instilled so much trauma in her. It's actually scary when I hear about it. But her stepfather didn't protect her. He was a jellyfish. He was just there. Her stepfather was the father of her 2 sisters, while my mother and her brother's biological father was my mom's biological father, who was not there. So there was a line of favoritism. There was a line of lack of protection from the males in her family. My mother's mother, my nana, she would oftentimes see my mother probably do things that she could only dream of doing. And through that line of jealousy and envy, she made my mom's life a living hell. She would cut her dresses up in front of her, her fucking her damn pageant dresses up in front of her. She would deny her to go to practices. She didn't want her to go to a performative school. She she anytime she would get stuff from her biological father, as far as like, clothes or anything like that, she would rip them up in front of her, cut them in front of her, degrade her, give her these obscene amount of responsibilities that a child should never have, caring after her younger siblings. And it's so funny that I talk about this because that's damn near a reflection of what I went through growing up. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's crazy, honestly. I don't think it's crazy, but it's like, damn, you can't do nothing but kind of giggle at it a little bit. But these are the things that my mother went through growing up with an envious mother, and more than likely a narcissistic mother. I hate that word. I do not like the word narcissistic. I feel like the internet has just ran with that. But yeah, that's what she had to deal with growing up. So for me growing up, you can only imagine where that led me. My mother moved out at 17 years old. To be 17 years old and have to embark on this big, scary world with no love behind you is scary, to say the absolute least. So we fast forward to me. My biological father is not in the picture. He is very selective when he is. I have a stepfather. Now, the difference between my mother's stepfather and my stepfather is my stepfather. Now, my stepfather is very honest with me, and I love my stepfather. I love him. I'm very close with him. I would tell him damn near anything. Um, I did feel protected by him until a certain point. Up until a certain point, I felt as though he would never lie to me, he would never mislead me, and he would always respect and honor me. And that is why I love my stepdad so much, because at the end of the day, we're all human and love is blinding. And I felt as though he got to a position with my mom where he really did have to choose between me and my mom. And because I was an adult, technically, I was a new adult, but I was still an adult, he chose my mom. They have two other children, and he's trying to ensure that they have a better upbringing than I did because he can't protect them from my mom if he is not there. So I understood why he made the decision that he made, but it did make me feel so just very little and very much like I wasn't worthy of protection. I had to go through all this abuse of my mother for 20 years, and you were in the house for a good chunk of it. And nobody ever protected me from her how he tried to protect my siblings from her. And I feel like I held a lot of resentment not only towards him, but towards my mother because you're my mother. Before my siblings came in the picture, when I was 13 years old, before my stepfather came in the picture, when I was 13 years old, it was just us against the world. But at the same time, because it was really me against the world, because I feel there was no union between me and my mother because there was always so much friction. My mother really didn't take the time to learn me, know me, care for me, nurture me, guide me. It was really just me by myself. When my mom had me, I was really with my nana, my grandma on my dad's side, my aunts. My mom was exploring the world, and I didn't understand this as a kid because I felt very alone. And I had to go through a lot of situations on my own. There were so many scary situations that I had been in and dark situations that I had been in. And I could only face them alone because my mom was out on the cruise and my mom was out doing whatever she was want to do. And I didn't want to be a burden to her life. I understood from a very young age. My mother didn't get the chance to live her youth. She moved out at 17, had me at 21. She's still mentally, emotionally, and spiritually a child. She did not get the opportunity to live the life that she wanted to live of traveling and being free and just going, because you're working and you're trying to pay your bills and you're trying to make sure you're taking care of yourself and then you got a kid and you're trying to make sure your kid's straight and da 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 da. Yeah, like I understand how hard that was, but my mom was gone. She was gone, child. She was doing her thing. So I felt very alone. I felt very isolated. Growing up, my mother, it was a lot of reflection of the same thing she went through. Tearing my stuff up, fucking my room up when she was under influences, her battle with substances, her narcissism, her verbal abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse. Like it was crazy. So now growing up and becoming an adult and being so empathetic and being so aware, but also having this strong internal rage towards my mother, it was hard to balance. Now, when I became of age and when my dad had to choose between me and my mom, it was because a circumstance she had put herself in. Infidelity, years of it at that. And for me, it put me in such a messed up position because I knew about everything. She knew I knew about everything. I wrote her a letter telling her how I knew what she was doing. She would get in the car and she was so strategic about it. And this is also why it makes it hard for me to have a relationship with my mother and empathize with her more more than I already do because it's like you're knowing that you're putting your child in a certain predicament and you don't care because it does not affect you. You don't have to deal with my emotions because you could care less about my emotions. You don't ask me about how I feel purposefully. And if you did, I'm not going to give you the truth because you can't take the truth, baby. You can't take the truth. If I told you about how you really made me feel, you'd kill yourself. Or better yet, you'll make me want to kill myself. Oh, the way we laugh at pain. You make me want to kill myself because you're gonna tell me my feelings ain't worth a penny and a dime. Like, you're gonna make sure I know how I feel. It's just absolutely an illusion. It does not matter. Get out your feelings and get into your bag, bitch. Like the world is hectic. And if you think me hurting your feelings is the worst of it, well, baby, you got another thing coming. And that's the energy my mama carried. That's the energy she really carried. Um, but yeah, she knew what she was doing was wrong. And it became such a fucking weight on my body, on my soul, knowing that my mother is doing something that could jeopardize our entire family. Because, pause, Meest apologies. Brief interruption. But yes, we are back. We are back. We are back. As I was previously stating, I think I was just mentioning, what was I mentioning before I paused? Got it. But I believe I was saying that just my mother did not really take in consideration the place that she put me in when she was doing her dirty deeds because it just did not affect her at all. I think she knew inherently that my loyalty was with her. And I also think it wasn't even a loyal thing. It's that I always desired the love of my mother. Every action that I took was in hope that my mother would love me. Please, mommy. Like, what the fuck? But I think that she knew that ultimately everything that I did was for her. Another pause, but yes, my mother ultimately knew everything that I did was for her love. It is actually kind of sad and it's actually so interesting to see how that plays a part in my life. But yes, like she would have these phone calls with this man while I was in the car and just like babying him and honeying him and just everything. And I'm hearing this man's voice. I'm like, that ain't my daddy. That ain't my daddy. Like, what's happening? It was honestly like an astonishing position to be in because at first, a lot of times, like throughout my childhood, I've always said, I feel like I'm going crazy. I didn't know that was called manipulation. I didn't know that was the word for it. It was like mental coercion, coercion. I don't know how to pronounce that word, but it was just at the end of the day manipulation. And so oftentimes I would say, "Oh my god, like I feel like I'm going crazy, y'all." Like, and when I would say this, it would really just be to myself. Like the y'all is me, you know. But and the voices in my head because I couldn't go to nobody about it. I was like, yo, I feel like I'm going crazy. Like my mama is talking to this man, but I don't know if I'm OD to assume that she's cheating on my dad. Like, there's no way she cheated on my dad. Like, there's no way. My dad is like the perfect person ever. Yeah, my dad's not fucking perfect. And every girl thinks her dad is like perfect when you have a good relationship with the father figure. You think there's no wrong that this person could do. Not saying my dad is perfect, but he did what he needed to as a man. But I understand now as a woman that just because certain actions are being taken doesn't mean that all needs are being met. But that does not give my mother the excuse or the okay to do what she was doing. Because at the end of the day, if you feel as though certain needs are not being met, it is your job to speak up on them and act on it. When you're in a marriage, it is a partnership. You are a union. And just because one part of your partnership ain't doing what they supposed to do, don't mean you go diddly daddly your ass out the door to the next motherfucker. Especially when you still in this marriage and acting as if everything is okay. So that's where I realized, yeah, no, my mother is wrong. Because if she wasn't happy, if she wasn't okay with this marriage, she wouldn't be going on trips with my dad. She wouldn't be posting the pictures that she posts. She wouldn't be, doing all the things that she does for him. I know my mother. I know how she acts when she's unhappy or unsatisfied. And one thing about my mom is if she is unsatisfied, if that woman is unsatisfied, she's not sticking around to find out what happened next. I've never seen my mom in any relationship, no matter how whatever it was, stick around for something that she didn't want to stick around for. But I also know that that is outside looking in, and I was also a child. So my memory and my reflections as from being a child to being an adult can be different than her actual position as the woman in the relationship. My mother could have very well dealt with a lot of shit that she wasn't unhappy with. She could have very well stuck in relationships where she felt like her needs weren't being met. Women do that. We do that. That is human nature. But I still know my mom is gonna do things that are gonna please her. Whether it's and it's usually like that right then and there pleasure. You know what I'm saying? There's no thought of longevity. There's no thought of what happens after this. It's just right here, right now, what makes me feel good, and this is what I'm gonna do. Um, and that's why I think it was more so not that you were unhappy in your marriage or that you were settling for things that you didn't desire, but more so that it made you feel good right then and there and you wanted your cake and to eat it too simply. It really wasn't too much to it, but you wanted everything that you wanted right then and right there. You know what I'm saying? Um, so yeah, being put in that position and knowing that it put me in a very, very scary place as a kid because again, this is my stepfather. He came into my life at 13 years old. My brother, me and my brother, we don't share him as a biological father. My little sister is his only biological child. So growing up without a father and this man deciding to come into our life and actually be our dad, all I know is he doesn't have to do the shit that he's doing. He doesn't have to be a dad to both me and my brother. His only obligation is to my sister. He could have very well been a nigga to bring one McDonald's bag and say, fuck the mother hooligans, bitch. But he didn't. He brought McDonald's for everybody. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like that to me instilled this like level of fucking fear that if I open my mouth, he is gonna leave and me and my siblings ain't gonna have no daddy and it's gonna be my fault. A nigga being a child in this world does not give him the obligation to stick around, and we all know that. These niggas could walk out the door any day they choose, and society is like, well, you're a single mom now, get over it. You know? So I just knew I'm like, I can't say anything because he's going to leave us. The anxiety that that instilled in me is actually like absurd. And now that I look back on it as an adult, I vividly remember like that's when I first started to experience like a different form of anxiety, like where panic attacks came into play. And I did not know they were panic attacks. I just knew my body went into like overdrive but shut down at the same time. And I could not say anything. I started skipping class, child. I started smoking a lot more. I was like tapped out of school. I was like, fuck all of this. Like, I couldn't. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I took a lot of backlash for that as a kid because it's like, why aren't you going to school? Why are you skipping school? Why are you not doing what you're supposed to do? And it's like, girl, if I told you in this room with my daddy why I'm not doing what the fuck I'm supposed to do, y'all gonna be wanting a lot more than these D's and these F's on this report card. I promise you're gonna have a lot more. The only D you're gonna be worried about is divorce. You're gonna have a lot more to worry about than these grades, bitch. So shut up. But no, I literally had to come up with every excuse in the book and be like, I'm getting bullied in class, like da 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 da. And the messed up part about it was when they would sit with the teachers and be like, she's getting bullied. She literally is friends with everybody. Oh, that was like egg on face. I was running out of excuses. And the fact that I was lying for my mom is even more absurd. So, again, we fast forward a little bit more. My dad finds out. He finds out. Well, first, I told him about the guy. And he found out. He was like, okay, I'm sorry that you were put in this position. Like, he was very empathetic. He was very like, this is not okay. Like, it was not okay. Now, did I really see him reprimand my mother? No. And not saying that he needed to spank my mama in front of me or something like that, but it was just more so like, you know what? Y'all have no problem reprimanding me in front of anybody who was around. Yeah, I want to see her ass get cussed out. You're right. You're right. She put me through some shit. Cuss her ass out. But no, it wasn't like that's how I felt as a kid. As an adult, do I feel like that's how it should have been handled? No, but I definitely feel as though, it was just a weird position to be in. And I think it was a weird position for my dad as well to like kind of not know how to handle the situation with me involved, with my siblings involved, and all that other stuff. But he addressed it the way he felt best. And honestly, it was probably the best way he could have gone about it. To be quite frank with you, how he addressed it and everything like that is kind of foggy to me because I really went through a fucking mental shutdown during a lot of that time in my life. I just mentally shut the fuck down. Like it's crazy because people that I went to school with would hit me up and they would be like, "Oh, we went to school together, da da da," all the other stuff. I would not remember them. I do not remember them, and I try so hard to remember these people. I don't remember them, and it's not that they weren't important enough to remember. These people were people that I talked to every day. They were close. Like these people, it was one girl. She sent me a picture of us together. I'm like, I don't remember you, and I couldn't tell her. I couldn't remember her. But the mental shutdown that I went through at the time was absurd. And I look back at this as an adult, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So fast forward again. And again, I'm giving a lot of detail because I feel like when it comes to this whole going no contact with your parents, everybody has shit to say on why you should talk to your parents and why you should deal with certain shit. I do not believe in putting up abuse on any level. I don't believe it. I don't believe in it. If you're gonna put up with abuse, you're voluntary. You're a voluntary victim, baby. And you're not even a voluntary victim. You are absolutely a willing participant. You know what I'm saying? And for me, when it comes to my mom, I can't allow that in my life. So I want to make sure that I give very key points of the things that led our relationship to where it is now. Not every single facet detail of my childhood, but the key points and instances of where I realized my mother is not a good person, period. So again, we tap back into this cheating story. So my mother's having this infidelity. My dad finds out. I tell him, I'm like, this is how long it's been going on. This is what I've seen. She was sending pictures, da da da, just telling him everything. And he's like, you know what? I believe you, everything like that. And I remember the instance of when I mentioned it to my mother. My mother was going through these her emotional outbursts, and again at this time, mental health is not a conversation that's being had. This is like 2015. I'm the hippie of the house. I'm into crystals. I'm into chakras. I'm into like de la namaste shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, we all need to calm down and just get in touch with our inner self. And like I'm going on that excursion of actually finding out what these things are, learning what depression is, learning what anxiety is, and it's opening my eyes. But yeah, I'm still so young, and it's so much information, and it's just, you know, it's still a lot of work to be done other than just me being the only one educating themselves. So I remember this day my mother had an emotional outburst, and I remember just in my head being like, do not get upset with her. Do not get upset with her. Do not allow her to take you out of a certain place to react the way that she wants you to react. Because me and my mother have gotten in physical fights before. And my mother's the type of person, she's gonna push you for a reaction so that way she feels validated in the way that she treats you. She could literally cuss you out, call you every name in the book, and put her hands up on you. But the second you snap at her, it's like, you look what you did to me, I'm your mama. And so I vividly remember this day. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna give her what she's looking for. And I wasn't. And she just kept going harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. And I remember it just being like, I don't know what I said, but it was in the most calmest voice. And I think it was something that really made her realize, like, I see you and I know what you're doing and I'm not falling for it. And I remember I had on my grandpa's button up at the time. And so I remember like being in this button up, and it was my favorite thing. And she like jacked me up and it ripped it, and I was just so mad. And I was like, you doing all of this shit, and you the one over here, yada yada yada. And right when I started calling her ass out, my dad come through the door. He like, what the hell? And you know, one thing about dads, when it comes to mom and daughter fights, they be like, I ain't getting into that. And I remember he walked in, and I'm like, you fucking with my, and he like, what? She kicked me out. So she said, get out of the house, get out of the house. She kicked me out. My mom was good for kicking me out of the house for bullshit. Kicked me out of the house. I remember being in the street screaming, I'm like, you mother, I'm going in, boy. I'm just like, oh, you gonna get it. And I remember that day, the weight was lifted off my shoulders. I was like, get it off of me. And so I remember telling my dad the last thing that she said before she closed the door in my face. I said, oh, and since you want to do so much, how about you tell him about blank? Boom, close the door in my face. My aunt come pick me up. I stayed with my aunt for about a week or two. My dad come over, we having conversations. He's trying to mediate it. I'm like, oh my God, this man gonna leave us. It's gonna be all my fault. My dad didn't leave us, child. And again, fast forward, my mother is still doing infidelity years later. And how I catch her this time and again, she's doing it in front of my face. This is as a grown woman. This is how I know you ain't learned your lesson, because that's when I was in like 10th, 11th grade. Now I'm graduated high school. It's the year what, 2020, 2019, 2020, around that time. This is eons later, and you still doing your shit, girl. You know you don't learn your lesson, and this is why I'm gonna say I got no respect for you, but this is why my respect for you has diminished, because again, she went back to flirting with a woman in front of me, being touchy feely with her in front of me, just being so inappropriate with this person in front of me. Meanwhile, my dad is literally infatuated with her. I think my dad was so in love with her more than he's ever been in love with her at this point in their marriage, because I think he thought like they had gotten over this hurdle and they had went through, the therapy, and they, whatever. And I think he really rediscovered his love for my mom at that point. And so he goes back and he's infatuated with her. And I just remember she has this basically a relationship going on with this lady that she works with. The I ain't gonna give too much tea. I ain't gonna give too much tea, but the irony of it is they was the host of a Christian radio station in our city. Won't he do it? Oh my lord. You know what I'm saying? They hosted a Christian radio station in our city, and I said, "Oh, the irony of it all." You know what I'm saying. I'm not a religious girl, but I know certain verses. I know some scriptures in that book, child. But yes. So I'm with my friend one night, and I literally have a hole where my shower is in my bathroom, because they're redoing the pipes and whatever the fuck in my bathroom, because my bathroom is leaking down on my neighbors. And this lady that's like doing this stuff with my mom is like, "Oh, you can come to my house anytime. You can take a shower at my house anytime." And I remember this lady just being so overly friendly and like asserting herself in my life, is just like rolling like, "Oh, we should hang out. We should definitely get to know each other." And all like, "I don't want to get to know you, bitch. I know what you and my mama doing. Y'all munching carpets. Get away from me." I remember just thinking like, "Girl, you trying to mac on my mama and she married? Are you for real?" And I remember my mom was just trying to get me to befriend her. And I really think that my mom was trying to get me to befriend her. So that was like, "Oh, she's so cool. She has this loft. You love lofts. Like, she's into the art community. She's into poetry. You love all that stuff. You guys should really be friends, because if I'm friends with her and if I like her, then I won't tell. Bitch, I'm grown. I have my own friends. Why would I want to be friends with your old ass mistress that look like my uncle a little bit? Stop fucking playing with me, girl. Like, what is wrong with you?" But I remember this day I needed to take a shower, and she literally wasn't even 3 minutes from my house. We pull up to the house. My mama car outside. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm texting my daddy like, "It's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your wife is?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, she at the beach bars with her friends." Bruh, beach bars my ass. She was munching on something crunchy, and it wasn't a sand, bitch. That's all I got to say about it. And so we found out again. You over here doing your dirt. My mom had the nerve to stop talking to me. I said, "How you gonna stop talking to me? I ain't snitch on you, snitch on yourself because you were lying." That's the first time we had to go no communication. So fast forward again. I'm older. I'm in Georgia, living my life. And this is as of recently. This is as of a couple of weeks ago. I'm just having a breakdown, child. I'm going through a bad breakup. It's just all of this mess going on. And all I want is my mother, because I feel like I'm at a place in my womanhood where I need my mother's guidance. I need my mother's assistance. And I'm hoping that my mother has gone through the development that she needs to, and that a lot of developments that I've gone through has would help me better deal with her. When I talk to my mom, I have to talk very, very slow and light. And when I say that, it's more so when she hits me up, it's going to take me some time to respond, because I have to ensure that I can get, especially when it comes to certain conversations, I have to ensure I'm in the emotional and mental space to be able to talk to her how she deserves to be spoken to. Yeah, you may have done dirt by me, and yeah, you may have done a lot of fucked up things, but you still deserve respect as a human. Shit, the dog deserve respect. I'm not gonna talk to my mama any kind of way. I still have that foundational understanding that you're my parent, and there are a multitude of sacrifices that you had to go through for me that you did not have to go through in order for me to survive and have the things that I need. Now, I do believe that when you have a child, that is a decision you make on your own. That is your own autonomy, like decision to birth the child into this world. But I still think that our parents are humans, and they're still discovering themselves and they're still learning. You know what I'm saying? And so that deserves a level of understanding. Um, and so I tried having a better relationship with my mother and just conversing and doing all these things, but some time went by. She didn't speak to me. She didn't check up on me. And I'm a firm believer in, and when it comes to me and my mom's relationship, I'm not doing more work than necessary. This is not 50-50 because I've tried my entire life to have a relationship with you, and you chose to have a relationship with other people. You chose to place your energy in other realms versus having a relationship with your child and being a better parent for your child. Like I said, it was a lot of abuse that went on and a lot of mistreatment that went on with my mother. And as much as I empathize with her as a human as she is and as the child she's internally stuck as, that is by choice. You do not have to be at a stagnant point emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. You can progress or you can regress or you can stay stagnant. I feel as though because a lot of our parents, this is how they survive. They are constantly they are stuck in survival mode. They are stuck in this defense mechanism because that is what got them to where they're at. That's how she got the house. That's how she got the car. That's how she got the job. That's how she got the lifestyle. That's how she got the man. That's how she got the woman. Like she's gotten everything that she's wanted. So why would I change who I am? Because obviously being like this has gotten me to where I need to be. Hey, you're just surviving. You're just trying to live around this bitch. And you don't have to do that anymore. And I think for me, with my mom, I am a reflection of her in all the best and worst ways possible. I'm the reflection of the life that she didn't get to live. I'm a reflection of growth. I'm a reflection of conquering certain demons. My mom knows she's not a good mom. That's the crazy part about it. My mom knows she's not a good mom. But the thing about not knowing, I think the thing about my mom knowing that she's not a good mom is she knows it, but she doesn't want to acknowledge where she lacked. She doesn't want to be called out completely. She doesn't want to be that vulnerable, you know? So, like I said, trying to have this relationship with her and trying to speak to her, and her just completely checking out because, look, we're going to have to call it like we see it. And it's going to be some hard work to have a relationship, but there are certain things that have to be spoken on. That was too much for her. And she basically just said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have no relationship with you. She told me, I told my mom because it took me like 3 or 4 days to respond to her, to the messages, because we came to a point where it was just, I'm going to have to call you out respectfully. And I wasn't upset with her. I wasn't upset with her at all, but we're going to have to acknowledge this. Look, you expect me to pick up the phone and call you, and you expect me to ask you why you haven't texted me in a month and why you haven't checked up on me. You expect me to do this, and I'm not going to do it because that history that we have of me doing all the work in our relationship, me dying to have a relationship with you and calling you and texting you and being the only one extending communication, being the only reason we hang out, being the only reason we see each other, being the only reason that we have any commonalities or common grounds. I'm not going to continue to do that because what that's instilled in me as an adult is that I need to chase relationships from people. I need to do all the work. I need to set my standards and my expectations so low that really I'm the only person showing up in a relationship and I'm carrying around the dead weight of somebody else and sitting them at this table and forcing them to play tea party with me just so it can feel like I have a companion. I'm not doing that anymore because that's what's being taught to me. And that's something that I have to break in my adult life, you know? And so there's no way that the person who has created this sort of negative default within me that I'm going to continue to do that for. And I had to check her. And she told me, and I told her, I said, it takes time for me to respond to you with conversations like this because I have to ground myself emotionally and I have to get the yells out, get the cries out, get the screams out because why don't you get it? I just want to shake her sometimes, like, why don't you fucking get it, bro? And I can't do that when I speak to you because then anything I say at that point, no matter how right it is, completely goes out of the window because of the tone that I use with you and how I go about communicating with you. You know what I'm saying? So I'm telling her this. And because I am so right, because I am so aware, because I'm so empathetic, because I'm so understanding, and because I'm so realistic, she does not want to continue a relationship because she knows it's going to be real work to go into this shit. And this is not just another thing in our life that we're going to sweep under the rug. We're not going to continue out the ways of which you're used to with our relationship and how you brought up our household. It's not going to happen. And I think because now I've gained control of it and it's not on her terms, it's not on her time, and she can't control me like the little player like she used to, I think that scares her a little bit. So now she doesn't want to have a relationship. So the no contact wasn't my call, it was her call. But I'm going to honor it on her behalf. I love my mother sincerely, and I see her as nothing less than a human being, but nothing more than a child inside, if you get what I'm saying. I see her as nothing less than a human, but nothing more than a child. And when it comes to children, you have to instill discipline and structure, and you have to instill boundaries. And with my mother, that is what is going to happen. And if you can't respect my boundaries, you will not have a relationship with me. And oftentimes I think about, well, what about if you have children? Or what about this? What about that? I have a family. Don't get me wrong. I have a family. I have family, and majority of them are not blood related to me at all. There are people that I found in my life that are willing to hear me, understand me, and be patient with me. They've watched me grow. They instill knowledge in me. They're real with me. They're honest with me. They're loving to me. They're kind to me. They're there when I'm at my lowest points. When I had nowhere to go, when I was evicted from my home in Jacksonville and I had nowhere to go, I couldn't even go to my own mother. Why? Because she was too. I honestly feel, from my perspective, you was too ashamed to look at what you had done in your life and the mess you created for yourself. You let my dad come live back with you because my dad is blinded by love. Even though we just caught you with a woman, we literally came to her house and you're walking out her house disheveled in a mess. He's still willing to be a puppet in your show for that love that he needs from you. Thankfully, he snapped out of it, but at that time, he didn't. He couldn't because my mother gave him the things that his mother couldn't. In fact, I actually think it was the opposite. I think my mother was more like his mother in the terms of them being narcissists. But my dad had that same mentality of if I perform, excuse me, if I perform and I show up and I do all the gimmicks and tricks and flips that she wants me to, she will love me properly and we can restore our marriage and we can restore our love for each other. But it was never going to happen. You could have done everything that you needed to do and then some. It's never going to be enough for her because it's not the lack of action that you take, it's the lack of love within herself. It's the lack of discipline with herself. It's the lack of realness within herself. So she is forever, ever going to yearn for something to fill that void, that immediate satisfaction, that immediate gratification. Because that time that it takes to go through the pain, that go through the memories, to go through the aches, that's a long time, baby. That's a whole lot of pain. Why do I want to go through all that pain when I could just get this love right here from this nigga who's gonna boost my head up and give me everything that I want? You know what I'm saying? And you, because you truly love me, you're not gonna make it that easy for me. You're gonna make me work to be a better person because that's what people who love you do. I love my mother. I love my mother. And I will not allow you to be the person that you are in my life, not just because of how it affects me, but because how it affects you. She's not ready for that shit, bro, especially from her child. Because you have to look at what you did to me. All the healing and growing that I've done is because of the pain that you have instilled in me. And not just my mom. You know, the world is a fucked up place. My mother isn't the only bad thing that's happened to me. She's not. I know that. I'm not like, oh, my mom is the reason why I'm so fucked up and everything's wrong. No. But my mother is my foundation at the end of the day. and my foundation was built like shit. So I had to restore that shit. That shit ain't cheap. That shit ain't free. And it ain't fucking easy. So the hell I look like making it easy for you to just come back in my life and do what you did to me. And also, if I have children, why the fuck would I want my children around you when I see how the fuck you did me? And how the fuck you doing my siblings? How the fuck you did my daddy? How the fuck you did the rest of our family? Why the fuck would I want that? Make it make sense. So yes, y'all. That is the backstory as to why me and my mother are going no contact. And if you're still here, I definitely appreciate that. This is a real episode. This is a very vulnerable episode. This is my audio diary. This is real shit. You know what I'm saying? And so, like I said, I do have an anonymous caller coming in today, and I don't know if I'm gonna make this a part two or not. I think I might make this a part two, parental guidance part one and parental guidance part two. And the anonymous caller is going to be on our part two segment. I actually re-recorded this a number of times trying to condense it, but I don't want to minimize my truth and my experience. And I also want to give you guys a real in-depth backstory as to just things that I'm going through. I don't know if people who are watching this are younger, older, my age, whatever, but we all come from somebody and we all got parents. And so, hopefully this helps somebody. Hopefully it was just an entertaining story to hear. Um, I'm not sure, but I thank you all for tuning into another segment of a Random Ass Podcast. Again, our parents need guidance, honey. They just human. They just people, and they just like us. All right. Trauma is it sucks, but it is what it is, and we deal it in our own ways. Just love, do to others as you want done to you, and yeah, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Y'all be blessed.